The forest was my sanctuary, where the rustle of leaves drowned out the world's noise and every step felt like freedom. For years, I hunted there not just for game, but for peace. A peace the Whispering Oaks Homeowners Association ripped away with their petty rules and fake fines. They didn't just attack my hobby, they attacked my soul, my right to exist as I was. I wasn't just going to fight back, I was going to make them regret ever crossing me. If you love stories where HOA bullies get what they deserve, subscribe to our channel for more epic HOA takedowns like this one. My name was Jake Thompson, and I bought my house in Whispering Oaks because it sat right against a massive forest, a private tract owned by some distant logging company. I was a careful hunter, always following state laws, carrying permits, and staying miles deep in the woods, far from the neighborhood's manicured lawns. I kept my gear hidden, my truck parked inside the garage, and never made a scene. But that didn't stop Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, from targeting me. It started small, like most HOA nightmares do. One chilly October morning, I got back from a hunt, unloading my cooler in the garage, when Karen's golf cart screeched up my driveway. She stormed out, clipboard in hand, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Jake, what's all this? Hunting's not allowed here." I stayed calm, explaining I hunted miles away on private land, not HOA property, and showed her my permits. She didn't care. "It's disturbing to residents," she snapped, scribbling on her clipboard. "Consider this a warning." I thought it was just Karen being Karen, nosy, controlling, the kind of person who lived for HOA meetings and power trips. But a week later, a certified letter arrived, citing me for disrupting community harmony under some vague bylaw. The fine was $150, and it demanded I stop all hunting, even off HOA land. I was stunned. They couldn't control what I did miles away, could they? I wrote back, politely explaining my rights, attaching copies of my licenses, and a map showing how far I hunted from Whispering Oaks. Karen's reply was colder than the forest at dawn. My appeal was denied, and another $200 fine was added for noncompliance. I started noticing her golf cart cruising by my house, her eyes scanning my property like a hawk. It wasn't just about hunting anymore, it felt personal, like Karen wanted to break me. I talked to my neighbor, Tom, a quiet guy who'd lived in Whispering Oaks for years. He rolled his eyes when I mentioned Karen. "She's been on a power trip since her divorce," he said. "Last month, she fined me for leaving my trash can out an hour too long." Tom wasn't a hunter, but he thought the HOA was way out of line, trying to police my off-property activities. His word stuck with me, but so did the growing pile of fines. By the third letter, they were threatening a lien on my house if I didn't pay up. A lien could ruin my credit, my mortgage, everything. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't about to let Karen's petty tyranny win. I needed a plan, something bigger than just fighting fines. Late one night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the forest through my window. That land was my escape, and Karen was trying to chain it to her HOA rulebook. What if I could turn the tables? What if I could make that forest mine? The idea hit me like a bullet. By the forest. It sounded crazy, but I started digging. I found county records showing the forest belonged to Pine Ridge Timber Company, a family trust run by an old guy named Harold Grayson, who lived states away. The taxes on thousands of acres were huge, and whispers in old county meeting notes hinted Harold might be open to selling. I didn't have millions, but I had a friend, Emily, whose husband, Mark, was a big-shot lawyer with connections. I called her, keeping it vague. You think Mark could help me look into buying some land?" She laughed. "Jake, you're full of surprises. I'll ask him." I didn't tell her why, not yet. I wanted this to stay quiet until the right moment. The next day, Karen upped the ante. I found a new letter taped to my door, no certified mail, just her handwriting. "Cease hunting or face legal action." It was a bluff, but it lit a fire in me. I wasn't just going to fight her, I was going to end her control. Mark called me that night, curious. "Jake, Emily says you're eyeing land. What's up?" I told him about the forest, leaving out the HOA drama for now. He was skeptical, but intrigued. "That's a huge deal, man. Let me dig into it. I know some real estate guys who owe me favors." I hung up, feeling the first spark of hope. Karen thought she had me cornered, but she didn't know I was already planning to rewrite the rules. Karen's handwritten note on my door kept me up that night, her words burning in my mind. She thought she could scare me into submission, but I was done playing her game. I started researching the forest deal harder, spending hours on my laptop, digging through property records. Pine Ridge Timber Company owned over 10,000 acres, and the taxes were crushing Harold Grayson. I found a blog post from a local land surveyor who mentioned Harold was tired of managing the land from afar. My heart raced. This was my chance. But buying a forest wasn't cheap, and I wasn't exactly swimming in cash. I needed help, and Mark was my best shot. The next morning, I met Mark at a coffee shop outside Whispering Oaks. I didn't want Karen's spies seeing us together. Mark slid into the booth, looking sharp in his suit. "Jake, you're serious about this forest thing?" he asked, sipping his coffee. I nodded, laying it all out. The HOA's fines, Karen's threats, and my crazy idea to buy the land to shut them down. His eyes widened, but then he grinned. "Man, that's bold. I like it." He said he talked to a real estate buddy who knew Harold's lawyer. The trust was open to offers, but it had cost millions. My stomach dropped. "I don't have that kind of money," I admitted. Mark leaned in, his voice low. "I might. And I've had a reason to hate HOAs too." That was the first twist. He wasn't just a lawyer. He had a personal grudge. Mark told me his own HOA horror story. Years ago, his old neighborhood's HOA tried to foreclose on his mom's house over unpaid fines for a fence they didn't like. He fought them in court and won, but it left a scar. "If you're sticking it to Karen, I'm in," he said. He offered to front most of the cash through a business loan, with me as a partner. We'd form a company to buy the forest. I was stunned. "Why take the risk?" I asked. He smirked. "Let's just say I know people who'd love to see an HOA eat dirt." I didn't push, but his confidence made me wonder what he wasn't telling me. Back home, Karen's harassment got worse. I caught her taking pictures of my truck from the street, probably looking for evidence of hunting gear. Then another letter arrived, this time with a $500 fine for unauthorized outdoor activities. I laughed bitterly. It was so vague it could mean anything. I called Tom, my neighbor, to vent. He was outside, trimming his hedges, and looked nervous. "Jake, be careful," he whispered. "I heard Karen's got a friend on the county board. She's bragging she can make your life hell." That was twist number 2. Karen had connections I didn't expect. My fight wasn't just with her, it was with a bigger machine. I started documenting everything, just like Mark suggested. I saved every letter, took pictures of Karen's golf cart creeping by, and even recorded her yelling at me one day when I was washing my car. "You're a disgrace to this community," she shouted, her face red. "Pay your fines or lose your house." I stayed cool, but inside I was boiling. That night, I found a surprise in my mailbox, not from Karen, but from an anonymous neighbor. It was a typed note. "Karen's planning to push new rules to ban hunting gear on properties. Watch your back." Twist 3. Someone in Whispering Oaks was on my side, feeding me intel. I didn't know who, but it gave me hope. Mark called me the next day with big news. His real estate buddy got a meeting with Harold Grayson's lawyer. Harold was interested in selling, but didn't want developers chopping up the forest. "He's a nature guy," Mark said. "If we pitch ourselves as conservationists, he might cut us a deal." I jumped at the idea. We drafted a letter to Harold, promising to protect the land. Mark added a twist of his own. He mentioned his contacts in state government could help preserve the forest as a protected area. I didn't know what contacts he meant, but it sounded convincing. We sent the letter, and I crossed my fingers. Meanwhile, Karen's county board friend showed up. I saw a guy in a suit at her house during an HOA meeting, and Tom later confirmed it was a county official. The next day, a new fine hit my mailbox, $1,000 for environmental disruption, claiming my hunting was scaring local wildlife. It was ridiculous, but the county stamp on the letter made it real. Twist 4. Karen wasn't just an HOA tyrant. She had pull with local government. I felt the walls closing in, but Mark's voice on the phone kept me grounded. "We're close, Jake," he said. "Harold's lawyer wants to meet next week." I hung up, staring at the forest. Karen thought she was winning, but she had no idea the storm I was brewing. The county's $1,000 fine hit me like a punch, but it only made me more determined. Karen wasn't just playing HOA games anymore. She had friends in high places, and they were coming for me. I kept my cool, adding the letter to my growing file of evidence. Every night, I stared at the forest from my window, picturing the day I'd own it and shut Karen down for good. Mark's call about meeting Harold Grayson's lawyer was the only thing keeping me sane. But things were about to get a lot crazier. A few days later, I got a weird email from an unknown address. It had no name, just a subject line: Whispering Oak Secrets. My gut told me to delete it, but curiosity won. The email was short. Karen's county friend is Robert Hayes. He's pushing to rezone the forest for HOA expansion. Check county records. My jaw dropped. Twist 1. Karen wasn't just finding me. She wanted to take over the forest for some fancy HOA project. I rushed to my laptop and found county meeting minutes online. Sure enough, Robert Hayes had proposed a plan to annex part of the forest for community development. Karen's name was all over it, listed as a consultant. She wasn't just after me. She was after Roscoe P. Coltrane said it best: nobody can hear you scream in space. But I was screaming inside. I called Mark right away. "Man, you won't believe this," I said, explaining the email and the rezoning plan. Mark went quiet for a second, then laughed. "Jake, this is gold. If we buy the forest first, we can block their whole scheme." He said he'd bring it up at the meeting with Harold's lawyer to show we were serious about protecting the land. Then he dropped a bomb. "By the way, I got a call from an old friend yesterday. He's a state environmental official, and he owes me one. He can fast-track any conservation permits we need." Twist 2. Mark had a government insider, someone with real power. I didn't ask how he knew the guy, but I was starting to think Mark was more connected than he let on. That same day, Karen turned up the heat. I was in my garage cleaning my hunting rifle, legal, locked away, and out of sight, when her golf cart rolled up. She didn't even knock, just stood at the door, smirking. "Nice gun, Jake. Too bad it's banned now." I froze. "What are you talking about?" She waved a paper. Some new HOA rule passed overnight, banning firearm storage on properties. It was insane. They couldn't enforce that legally, but the $2,000 fine attached to it was real. "Pay up or we'll seize it," she said, walking off. I was shaking with anger, but then I noticed something odd. A car parked across the street, tinted windows, watching me. Twist 3. Someone was tailing me, and I had a bad feeling it was tied to Karen's county buddy. I told Tom about the new rule over coffee at his place. He looked pale. "Jake, I heard something at the HOA meeting. Karen's telling people you're dangerous, saying you threatened her." My blood ran cold. "That's a lie," I said. Tom nodded. "I know, but she's got half the board scared." "And that county guy, Robert? He was there, whispering with her." Twist 4. Karen was framing me, painting me as a threat to justify her attacks. Tom lowered his voice. "There's more. I found out who sent you that anonymous note. It's Lisa, the HOA treasurer. She hates Karen but can't speak out. She's terrified." Twist 5. My secret ally had a name, and she was risking everything to help me. I met Mark later that night at a bar to plan our next move. He'd just gotten off the phone with Harold's lawyer, who liked our conservation pitch but wanted a face-to-face in 2 days. "We're close, Jake," Mark said, but his face was serious. I did some digging on Robert Hayes. He's not just some county hack. He's got ties to a big developer who wants that forest for condos. Karen's probably getting a cut. Twist 6. The rezoning wasn't just an HOA power grab. It was a money scheme. I clenched my fists. "We can't let them win." Mark nodded. "We won't. My state friend's already pulling strings. If we get the forest, we can lock it up as a nature preserve forever." Driving home, I noticed that same car with tinted windows tailing me again. My heart pounded. I took a few sharp turns, and it disappeared, but I wasn't imagining things. Karen and Robert were playing dirty, and I was in deeper than I thought. I got home and checked my mailbox, expecting another fine. Instead, I found a small envelope, no stamp, just my name. Inside was a single sentence: "Stop now, or you'll regret it." Twist 7. Someone, probably Robert, was threatening me directly. I locked my doors, checked my security cameras, and called Mark. "We need to move fast," I said. He agreed. 2 days, Jake. "We'll own that forest, and Karen's done." That threatening note in my mailbox shook me, but it also lit a fire. Karen and her county pal Robert were playing dirty, and I wasn't backing down. I spent the next morning checking my security cameras, but the footage only showed a shadowy figure dropping the envelope at 2 a.m. No face, no license plate. I sent the clip to Mark, who was already prepping for our meeting with Harold Grayson's lawyer. "Jake, this is getting wild," he said over the phone. "Stay sharp. We're meeting the lawyer tomorrow." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. The forest was my only shot to turn this around, and I wasn't letting anyone scare me off. Then things got weirder. I was grabbing coffee at the local diner when Tom texted me, "HOA emergency meeting tonight. Karen's pushing something big. You should know." My stomach twisted. I hadn't been invited, which wasn't a surprise, but Tom's tone felt urgent. I texted back, asking for details, but he didn't reply. Instead, Lisa, the secret ally from the HOA board, slipped me another anonymous note through my mailbox that afternoon. It read, "Karen's proposing a community vote to ban you from the neighborhood. Robert's backing her." Twist 1. She wasn't just finding me anymore. She was trying to kick me out of my own home. My blood boiled, but I had to stay focused. I called Mark to update him. He was in his office, sounding distracted but intense. "Jake, I found something you need to hear," he said. "My state friend ran a check on Robert Hayes. He's under investigation for shady land deals. If we expose him, Karen's whole plan falls apart." Twist 2. Robert wasn't just powerful. He was vulnerable, and we had a chance to hit him where it hurt. Mark said he'd bring it up with Harold's lawyer to prove we were protecting the forest from crooks like Robert. "There's more," he added. "My friend says the forest has rare wildlife. If we get it designated as a protected habitat, no developer can touch it." Twist 3. Our conservation pitch just got a major boost, and Karen's rezoning scheme was in serious trouble. That evening, I decided to crash the HOA meeting. I wasn't invited, but I had every right to be there. The community center was packed, and Karen stood at the front, all smiles, with Robert Hayes next to her. She didn't see me slip in and sit in the back. She started ranting about problem residents who threatened the neighborhood's values, clearly talking about me. Then she dropped a bombshell. She proposed a new rule to let the HOA evict homeowners for repeated violations. Robert nodded along, promising county support. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others looking uneasy. Twist 4. Karen was weaponizing the entire community against me, and Robert was her muscle. I was about to stand up and call her out when Lisa, the treasurer, shocked everyone. She stood up, her voice shaky but loud. "This is wrong, Karen. You're targeting Jake for personal reasons, and Robert's only here because he wants the forest for his developer friends." The room went dead silent. Karen's face turned purple. "Sit down, Lisa," she snapped, but Lisa kept going. "I've got proof emails between you and Roberta. Guy named Jake Thompson lived in Whispering Oaks, a suburban neighborhood next to a huge forest. He loved hunting, but the HOA, led by Karen Mitchell, started fining him for it, even though he hunted miles away on private land. Jake fought back, but the fines kept coming, and Karen threatened to put a lien on his house. Then he got a wild idea: buy the forest and ban the HOA from using it. With help from his friend Mark, a lawyer with a grudge against HOAs, Jake started working on a deal to buy the land. He found out Karen and a shady county official, Robert Hayes, were planning to rezone the forest for condos. Jake and Mark pitched themselves as conservationists to the forest owner, Harold Grayson, while Karen kept escalating her attacks, even trying to ban Jake from the neighborhood. Jake's secret ally, Lisa, exposed Karen's scheme at an HOA meeting, but the fight was far from over. Now, Jake was ready to turn the tables and make Karen regret ever messing with him. Lisa's outburst at the HOA meeting left everyone stunned, and for a second, I thought she'd blown the whole thing wide open. Karen's face twisted with rage, but she recovered fast, banging her gavel like a judge. "This meeting's over," she barked, storming out with Robert Hayes right behind her. People whispered, throwing glances my way, but nobody dared speak up. I slipped out before Karen could spot me, my heart pounding. Lisa had just put a target on her back, and I knew Karen would come for us both now. But something bigger was brewing, and I wasn't ready for what hit next. The next morning, I woke up to a brick through my front window. Glass was everywhere, and a note was taped to the brick, "Leave or else." My hands shook as I called the police. Twist 1. Karen or Robert had escalated to vandalism, and they weren't playing games anymore. The cop who showed up took a report, but didn't seem hopeful. "Hard to prove who did it without a witness," he said. I sent the note's picture to Mark, who was already on his way to meet Harold Grayson's lawyer. "Jake, this is bad," he texted back. "But we're close. Stay cool." I wasn't feeling cool. I was furious, and the stakes just got personal. I decided to check my security cameras again, hoping for a lead. The footage was grainy, but I caught a glimpse of a figure in a hoodie near my house at 3 a.m. No face, but the hoodie had a logo. Same one I'd seen on a guy at the HOA meeting sitting near Robert. Twist 2, the brick wasn't random. It was tied to Robert's crew, maybe even hired muscle. I emailed the clip to Mark, who called me right away. "Jake, you're not going to believe this," he said, his voice tight. "My state friend just found out Robert's developer pals are linked to a shady LLC that's been buying up land nearby. They're desperate for the forest, and they know we're in the way." Twist 3. Karen's scheme was part of a massive land grab, and we were stepping on some dangerous toes. I barely had time to process when Tom knocked on my door, looking spooked. "Jake, you gotta hear this," he said, glancing over his shoulder. He'd overheard Karen at the community pool, bragging to another board member about fixing the vote to kick me out. "She's got dirt on half the board," Tom whispered. "She's blackmailing them to side with her." Twist 4. Karen wasn't just bullying. She was running a dirty political game inside the HOA, rigging everything against me. Tom handed me a USB drive. "Lisa gave me this. It's got copies of Karen's emails with Robert. She's scared, but wants you to have it." I plugged it into my laptop, and my jaw dropped. The emails laid out their plan to rezone the forest, with Karen promising Robert a big payout. Twist 5. Lisa had handed me a smoking gun. I called Mark to tell him about the emails, but he had his own news. "Jake, the lawyer loved our pitch," he said. "Harold's ready to sell, but there's a catch. Another buyer's sniffing around. An LLC tied to Robert's developer friends. We've got 48 hours to seal the deal." Twist 6. Karen's backers were racing us to buy the forest, turning this into a high-stakes showdown. Mark wasn't worried, though. "My state friend's pulling strings," he said. "He's got a contact at the county who can delay Robert's rezoning vote. We just need to move fast." I didn't know how Mark had all these connections, but I was starting to think he was more than just a lawyer. That night, I got a call from a block number. A man's voice, low and rough, said, "Drop the forest deal, or that brick's just the start." I hung up, my heart racing, and checked my cameras again. Nothing. But when I stepped outside to clear my head, I saw that same car with tinted windows parked down the street, engine running. Twist 7. Robert's people were watching my every move, and they weren't subtle anymore. I texted Mark, who told me to lay low. "We're meeting Harold tomorrow," he said. "If we get this, Karen and Robert are done." I locked my doors, double-checked my rifle was secure, and sat by the window, staring at the forest. It wasn't just land anymore, it was my weapon, and I was one step away from turning it against them. That threatening call and the car outside my house had me on edge, but I wasn't giving up. The forest was my way out, and with Mark's help, we were hours away from meeting Harold Grayson's lawyer. I barely slept, checking my cameras every hour, expecting another brick or worse. Morning came, and I met Mark at a hotel conference room for the big meeting. My nerves were shot, but Mark was calm, almost too calm. "Jake, we've got this," he said, adjusting his tie. I didn't know how he stayed so cool, but I was about to find out why. The lawyer, a sharp guy named Paul, laid out Harold's terms. He'd sell the forest for a fair price, but only if we guaranteed no development. We pitched our conservation plan, mentioning the rare wildlife and Robert's shady rezoning scheme. Paul nodded, impressed, but then dropped a bomb. "There's another bidder," he said. "They upped their offer last night." Twist 1, Robert's developer pals were throwing big money to steal the forest from us. Mark didn't flinch. "We'll match it," he said. I stared at him, shocked. "How?" I whispered. He just winked. Twist 2, Mark had a secret plan to outbid them, and he hadn't told me. Paul stepped out to call Harold, and Mark leaned in. "My state friend came through," he whispered. "He's got a grant lined up to fund half the purchase if we make the forest a preserve." Twist 3, Mark's mystery contact wasn't just delaying Robert's vote. He was bankrolling our deal. I was floored, but before I could ask more, my phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Karen knows about your meeting. She's furious. Watch out." Twist 4, Karen had spies, and she was onto us. My stomach churned. How did she find out? We wrapped the meeting with Paul promising a decision by tomorrow. Driving home, I noticed that tinted window car tailing me again. I sped up, weaving through side streets, and lost it, but my heart was racing. When I got home, Tom was waiting on my porch, looking pale. "Jake, Karen's saying you bribed Lisa to lie at the meeting," he said. "She's got the board voting to sue you." Twist 5, Karen was twisting Lisa's betrayal into a legal attack against me. I showed Tom the emails Lisa gave me, and he shook his head. "This is bad, man. Robert was at Karen's house this morning. They're planning something big." That night, I got another anonymous email. "Check the county website." Now, I did, and my jaw dropped. Robert had filed an emergency motion to seize part of the forest for public use, claiming it was needed for safety. Twist 6, it was a desperate move to block our deal, and it had Karen's fingerprints all over it. I called Mark, who was already on it. "My friend's killing that motion," he said. "We're signing tomorrow, Jake. Stay ready." I hung up, staring at the forest. Karen and Robert were throwing everything at me, but I was one step from owning their worst nightmare. The forest deal was so close I could taste it, but Karen and Robert were pulling every dirty trick to stop me. That emergency seizure motion on the county website had my blood boiling, and I knew time was running out. I called Mark first thing in the morning, pacing my kitchen. "We're signing today, right?" I asked. He sounded pumped. "Yeah, Jake. Harold's lawyer just confirmed. We beat the other bid." But then he paused. "There's a problem. Someone tipped off the developers. They're filing a lawsuit to stall us." Twist 1, Robert's crew was hitting us with legal warfare to keep the forest out of our hands. I was about to lose it when Mark dropped another surprise. "My state friend's got us covered," he said. "He's pushing an emergency conservation order to lock the forest as a protected area today. No lawsuit can touch it then." Twist 2, Mark's mystery contact was playing hardball, outmaneuvering Robert's dirty moves. I didn't know who this guy was, but he was a game changer. "Meet me at the lawyer's office in 2 hours, Mark said. I hung up, ready to end this, but trouble was waiting. When I stepped outside, Karen was on my lawn with a county inspector, pointing at my house. "That's him," she said, smirking. The inspector handed me a notice claiming my property violated environmental codes because of my hunting. It was a $3,000 fine, payable in 48 hours, or they'd slap a lien. Twist 3, Karen had weaponized the county to hit me where it hurt most, right before the deal. I argued, showing my permits, but the inspector just shrugged. "Take it up with the board," he said. Karen's grin made it clear this was her doing. I sped to the lawyer's office, fuming. Mark was already there, and Paul, Harold's lawyer, had the contract ready. But before we signed, Paul got a call and stepped out, looking tense. He came back grim. "The developers got an injunction. We can't sign until a judge reviews it tomorrow." Twist 4, Robert's lawsuit had landed, freezing our deal at the last second. I felt sick, but Mark stayed cool. "My friend's order goes through tonight," he whispered. "If it's protected land, their injunction's useless." I nodded, praying he was right. As we left, I got a text from Tom. "Karen's at the community center, rallying the board to vote you out tonight." Twist 5, she was pushing the eviction vote while I was stuck fighting the lawsuit. Then Lisa emailed me, frantic. "Karen knows about the conservation order. She's telling Robert to sabotage it." Twist 6, Karen had inside info, maybe from a county leak, and was one step ahead. I gripped my steering wheel, staring at the forest. Tomorrow would decide everything, and I was ready to burn Karen's world down. Karen's eviction vote and Robert's injunction had me cornered, but I wasn't done. That morning, I drove to the county courthouse, where Mark said the judge was reviewing the forest deal. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Karen's at the courthouse with Robert. They're pushing the judge to block you. Twist 1, she'd followed us, desperate to kill the deal. I found Mark outside the courtroom, looking smug. Relax, Jake, he said. My friend's conservation order went through at midnight. The forest is untouchable. I exhaled, but the fight wasn't over. Inside, Karen and Robert sat with a slick lawyer, smirking like they'd won. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, threw out the injunction in 10 minutes. The land's protected now, she said. No developers touching it. Twist 2, Robert's lawsuit was dead, and Karen's face went white. But Mark had another surprise. Your Honor, he said, we're the new owners. Twist 3, we'd signed the deal secretly that morning, using a backdated contract to dodge the injunction. I owned the forest, and Karen didn't know yet. We left the courthouse, and I headed to the community center, where Karen was holding her eviction vote. I walked in just as she ranted about my dangerous behavior. I held up the deed. I own the forest now, I said, and I'm banning Whispering Oaks from using it. The room gasped. Twist 4, Karen's precious trails. Her HOA's bragging rights were gone. She screamed, you can't do that. But I had signs printed. Private property. No trespassing. I'd already hired a crew to post them. Then Lisa stood up, holding a laptop. I'm done hiding, she said, playing a recording of Karen and Robert plotting to bribe the county board. Twist 5, their whole scheme was exposed. The crowd turned on Karen, demanding her resignation. Robert bolted, but cops were waiting outside. Mark's state friend had tipped them off about his shady deals. Twist 6, he was arrested on the spot. Karen tried to run, but Tom blocked her. You're done, he said. I walked out, staring at my forest. I'd turned Karen's rules against her, protecting the land I loved. She lost her power, her trails, everything. The moral? Don't bully someone who fights back, because they might win bigger than you ever feared. If you loved this HOA takedown, subscribe for more.